Right now, allow me to tell you something. It wasn't a basketball play that you just witnessed, you just seen a slow motion mutiny. It was played in front of 20,000 spectators, aired live on national television, and concluded with a three-pointer from Caitlin Clark that sealed the victory and gave the Indiana Fever a victory they didn't need in the first place. My name is Dre Fiber. Court Current is this, and today we are revealing every detail of what actually transpired during those last moments, because the narrative that everyone is presenting to you is just partially accurate. The whole tale, here we do just that. Not a filter, no corporate pretense. Due to the depth of this one, let's begin at the beginning. Because context is crucial. In this game, the Indiana Fever enjoyed a 17-point advantage. A 17-point lead is not lost by accident. You blow a 17-point lead due to a combination of shoddy adjustments, dubious rotations, and an offensive system that is so worn out, predictable, and fundamentally flawed that your opponent figures it out and goes on the rampage, while your head coach stands on the sidelines with her arms crossed, as if she just received some very disappointing news from her accountant. That's what took place. The Fever gradually lost that lead, and by the time the last possession came around, they were in an unfavorable situation. They should have been closing out in cruise control 10 minutes sooner, but they needed a miracle play to survive the game. This is where things start to become pretty interesting. At this point, the narrative shifts from being about basketball to something far more interesting, because according to several people in that building, including one of Clark's own teammates, who was speaking on Indianapolis radio, the play that was created during that last huddle, when the timeout was called and the clipboard came out, was intended for Kelsey Mitchell. The main choice was Kelsey Mitchell. The goal of the play was to get Kelsey Mitchell downhill, either by drawing up for a mid-range or by taking it all the way to the hoop. That was the strategy. In those fleeting moments when everything was at stake, Stephanie White and her team came up with that. However, it was not the case. Viewpoint? Thankfully, such was not the case, because I don't think Kelsey Mitchell would save anyone at that particular moment. She plays well, she plays with toughness. However, Caitlin Clark was clearly involved from the beginning. This script was written by the basketball gods. The coaching staff's willingness to step aside long enough to allow it to unfold was the only uncertainty. It was made possible by Sophie Cunningham. When credit is truly due, let's give it. Because Sophie Cunningham made a snap decision that completely altered the course of that possession, read that defense in real time, and processed the information more quickly than the play call could account for. The pass coming in. It begins there. Sophie is staring at the defense as she takes the ball out of bounds. She's reading the backside of Cody McMahon and Sonia Citron. She also observes a breakdown in communication. The two defenders become entangled. Rather than switching to Caitlin Clark, they both follow Lexi Hull, and a window appears out of nowhere. The wall has a fissure that is the perfect size for a three-pointer. Additionally, Sophie Cunningham makes the read, throws the pass to Caitlin Clark in rhythm, and then watches history happen rather than forcing the ball to Kelsey Mitchell as the play was written. Bang! 3 balls, Fever prevails, and everything you need to know about this team's true situation is revealed by the commotion that ensued. Here's the information that completely alters the discussion. After the game, Lexi Hull appeared on Indianapolis radio. She added, "I want you to hear this clearly. The last play was not exactly what was drawn up, not precisely what was sketched. Consider the implications of that. You may just respond, 'It worked out,' if you're Lexi Hull, a teammate on local radio, and someone asks you about the last possession. One may claim that the execution was excellent. You may simply state that Caitlin Clark is a bucket. She didn't say that though. It wasn't precisely what was drawn up. She claimed by doing this, she opened the door to a tale that was just demanding to be shared. Because this is a straightforward reasoning. If winning the game by giving Caitlin Clark a wide open three-pointer in the closing seconds wasn't the plan, then what was? If that result, a clear search for your team's top shooter in a crucial situation, was in any way different from the original plan, then Kelsey Mitchell must have been the original plan. No other explanation exists. The maths is easy. Clark wasn't the intended audience for the play. Clark made the shot. As a result, the choice of shot deviated from the idea. That departure was initiated by Sophie Cunningham and completed by Caitlin Clark. That isn't a breakdown of basketball. It's a rogue enterprise. That's two players staring at each other as they emerge from the huddle, sharing a look that conveys everything without using words, and arriving to the collective conclusion that they are more knowledgeable than what they were just informed. The most unsettling aspect of Stephanie White's narrative is that they were correct. Because how can that be disciplined? How would you fix that? When the off-script choice helped you win the game, how can you enter a filming session and say, hey, we need to talk about the fact that you went off-script? You are unable to. Stephanie White was in precisely that position when the ball went through the net. Sophie Cunningham deserves every single bloom for this read, in Dre's opinion. To be honest, she is the unsung hero of this possession and the entire discussion. It's inevitable that people will discuss Caitlin Clark's successful shot. However, Sophie made the choice that led to the shot. Sophie ignored the play call, took a look at that defense and delivered. That is the pinnacle of basketball IQ. This player has more faith in her eyes than in a clipboard, and she had every right to do so at that precise moment. Let's now discuss Stephanie White. Because Stephanie White needs to be discussed, an entire episode might have been devoted to the post-game press conference alone. Is that the play you drew up? And how much confidence do you have in Caitlin Clark for that shot? A reporter asked her directly. Furthermore, Stephanie White's response is among the most insightful remarks I have heard a head coach make in a post-game situation in a very long time. She claims that Austin Kelly created the play. I'm quoting because I want to be precise. Her assistant coach, Austin Kelly. She quickly sidesteps the issue concerning her own play design, gives Austin Kelly credit, and then attempts to change course by claiming that it was flawlessly executed. I need you to take a moment to consider it. In the closing seconds, your team made a three-pointer to win the game. As the head coach, you should tell the media that your assistant coach created the play in response to the inquiry of whether you did. In Dre's opinion, what precisely is the head coach's responsibility in those situations if your assistant coach is the one creating all of the end-of-game plays, out-of-bounds sets following timeouts, and final possession designs? When Austin Kelly is holding the marker during those timeouts, what is Stephanie White doing? These are valid inquiries. If the Indiana Fever organization hasn't already, they should be asking themselves these issues because of the negative publicity. It's not only this play, by the way. Austin Kelly has been the creator of several late-game strategies for this Fever team this season. According to information released following the game, Austin Kelly drew up the play that gave Caitlin Clark the game-tying three against the Mystics. Unfortunately, Aaliyah Boston missed Austin Kelly's mid-range look. From a design perspective, he has been carrying out the hard lifting during difficult times. Nevertheless, Stephanie White is the one leading the press conference. It's her who makes headlines. Whatever is going on with this offense is associated with her name, and from where I stand, it's getting more and more difficult to defend that arrangement. Since it closely relates to this broader pattern, allow me to mention something that occurred during the actual game. Fever supporters witnessed Caitlin Clark preparing to return to the game at one point. The scorer's table is where she is. Stephanie White tells her to take a seat again when she is ready. When Clark returns to her seat, Her expression does not resemble that of a player who merely comprehends a coaching decision. A player who is biting her tongue so hard that she can taste it would have that expression. That is the expression of someone who has experienced this before, is worn out by it, and is making every effort to act professionally in a situation that is pushing the boundaries of her professionalism. Dre's personal viewpoint? The headline ought to have been that exact moment. When Caitlin Clark tries to check in, a player of her caliber on a team that sorely needs her on the floor to win basketball games is instructed to sit back down. That is an illogical coaching choice that directly contributes to the larger discussion about whether Stephanie White truly understands what she has on her roster, or if she is so devoted to her structure, system, and methods that she is unable to change, even when the talent in front of her demands it. Because this is the aspect of Caitlin Clark that is obscured by all the noise and drama. This woman is more than just a skilled athlete. She has a talent that transcends generations. People are paying attention because of her. She is the reason the Indiana Fever are a national topic of discussion every week, the reason the attendance figures appear the way they do, and the reason the television ratings are what they are. When Caitlin Clark tries to check back in, you don't sit her down. When Caitlin Clark is in your huddle, you don't create final plays for other players. You don't run an offense that is so predictable, conservative, and fundamentally out of sync with the skill set of your best players that your own players need to go rogue in the closing seconds in order to create a good shot. No amount of victories will make up for any of this, and the fact that it continues to occur tells you something about Indiana's coaching position. Let's now discuss the reaction following the shot, as this is the aspect that the internet has been thoroughly analyzing. And to be honest, they are correct. When that three comes in, watch Stephanie White. Watch closely, because a head coach should be happy when her team wins on a buzzer beater, when her players perform well under duress, and when the last possession produces the outcome that everyone was hoping for. Unrestrained, sincere, exploding happiness. The kind of response you've witnessed from coaches throughout this sport's history when the ball enters the net at the perfect time. That ought to be her response. She doesn't respond that way. Instead, you observe a woman who appears to be conducting mental maths. Rather than simply praising the fact that it happened, she appears to be thinking about what happened and attempting to understand its significance. And hey, folks will claim that's just the way she is. Some will speculate that she may simply be calmer on the sidelines than other coaches. Watch the whole thing though. Observe her face just before. Observe Clark's body language in the moments following the ball's release. This isn't poise. This is the response of a coach who had a different goal in mind and is now witnessing an event that she did not entirely approve of. Watch Caitlin Clark leave the court after that. She uses the dap to strike Cody McMahon. They rejoice as if they were back in Iowa. It's as if they've returned to a time when everything flowed naturally and the moves and game made sense. Clark then passes Stephanie White, doesn't give her a glance, ignores her, denies her the opportunity. Now, some viewers may argue that Clark was simply experiencing the intensity of the moment. I was so excited that I failed to notice White standing there, perhaps. However, you have to disregard all else we know about the relationship between these two in order to read that. You also have to disregard what happens next, because Sophie Cunningham is discovered by Clark. Furthermore, Caitlin Clark's smile at Sophie Cunningham is quite different from the one she gave Stephanie White. That smile conveys a certain message. There's a backstory to that smile. That's the smile of two people who decided together, took a chance together, defied expectations together, and got away with it. That smile isn't typical of a celebration, a conspiratorial smile, that is. In a moment that only they can completely comprehend, two players are acknowledging one another. Dre is reading that exactly as it appears, but you are free to read it however you see fit. Let's also talk about the media and fan response, which has been enormous and nearly totally one-sided. The devotees of Fever are dissatisfied. The game was won by them. They were shot. It was presented by Caitlin Clark. Additionally, the majority of the fan base continues to believe that this coaching staff is fundamentally flawed, and it has been for some time. Great job, coach. Great adjustment was not the commentary that was released following this game. Fantastic design. CC should not have had to bail you out once more. The refrain is that every platform, comment section, and call-in show repeats that chorus. It is not because of the coaching that the players are winning games. For a team hoping to win a championship, a victory that seems like a jailbreak, where your top players had to innovate their way to a decent shot against a design that didn't call for them, is not a sustainable strategy. In Dre's view, the Indiana Fever's current squad is among the best in the WNBA. You have Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, and Caitlin Clark. You possess versatility, depth, and shooters. This team ought to be dominant on paper. The coaching is the reason they are not dominant. Rather than implementing a cohesive offensive identity, they are surviving on rogue plays and fortuitous defensive miscommunications. It is the head coach in particular. After taking over a program with exceptional talent, Stephanie White has spent the season figuring out how to limit rather than release it. That is not a small tactical dispute. That is a conceptual mismatch between a roster and a coach that ultimately leads to disintegration. Right now, we might be witnessing the start of that disintegration. In one version of this tale, everyone advances after Kelsey Mitchell receives the ball on the last play and makes a difficult shot. Stephanie White is able to enjoy a victory that she drew up. The news conference is tidy. No one is inquiring as to who created what. Furthermore, the story of the rogue operation never comes to light. However, it was not the case. Instead, what transpired has sparked a discussion that was obviously already simmering beneath the surface, just waiting for this kind of triggering situation to bring it all to the surface. The play going to Clark instead of Mitchell, Lexi Hull's radio comments, the press conference diversion to Austin Kelly, Clark not looking White in the eyes, the smirk she gave Sophie. Each and every one of these components comes together to form a picture that, once you've seen it, is very hard to unsee. Additionally, let's give Austin Kelly his flowers as he consistently comes up in all of these discussions in a positive perspective. The final game designs belong to him. He is the one who executed the late clock. The inventive out-of-bounds sets that have provided Indiana with excellent looks throughout the season's critical moments. His Austin Kelly will play a significant role in the Indiana Fever's ability to have a meaningful postseason discussion, which I think they can, and eventually that organization must face the fact that the assistant coaches, not the head coach, are providing the most effective late-game coaching. Now, even though not everyone is expressing it out, everyone is thinking about the bigger topic, so I want to take a moment to zoom out and discuss it. Is Stephanie White this team's ideal coach? She doesn't have a strong basketball mind. She obviously has a technical understanding of the game. Is she not a good person? She is, by all accounts. Specifically, the question is whether she is the best candidate to lead a team that is now centered around Caitlin Clark. With these stakes in this WNBA era, where everything is scrutinized, every choice will be examined and every interaction will be scrutinized. The answer that the evidence consistently points to is no, based on everything we have witnessed this season, including the offensive system that stifles creativity, the confusing rotations, the late game designs carried out by her own assistant, and the sideline moments that have gone viral for all the wrong reasons. She's not a good fit, And the longer this persists without an honest response from the organization, the more it becomes an issue that cannot be resolved by a game-winning three-pointer. Because this is the harsh truth. There is a limit to how many times Caitlin Clark can save the day. There is a limit to how many times Sophie Cunningham can go rogue until the defense adapts, the opponent discovers the deception, and the fortuitous communication breakdown on the backside doesn't occur. Your players' improvisation away from your own play calls cannot be the foundation of a winning system. That can't be sustained. That isn't a basis. That group of gifted individuals overcame the limits of their own coaching staff via sheer skill and basketball instinct. And soon that becomes insufficient. Somehow, the largest discussion following the Indiana Fever's victory is about all the things that are still wrong. That provides all the information you require. Caitlin Clark is unique. In the most crucial situations, Sophie Cunningham demonstrated her clutchness. Austin Kelly is creating plays that are genuinely effective. Stephanie White then described the execution as flawless while standing at a press conference podium and telling the world that her assistant coach had crafted the game-winning shot. Even still, her teammates stated on the radio that it wasn't quite what they had envisioned. This is not something you can make up. How skilled your writers are is irrelevant to me. Right now, the Indiana Fever organization's real life is more dramatic than anything I could write for you. For this one on Court Current, that will suffice. I am grateful if you have been locked in with me the entire time and I can see you. Make it pain by smashing that like button right now. Every Fever fan, WNBA viewer, and basketball enthusiast who is interested in the unvarnished reality of what goes on behind the scenes should watch this film. Please share your opinions in the space provided for comments below. I would like to know if this was a rogue operation. Did Sophie and Cece intentionally defy the play call? Is Stephanie White's stay in Indiana coming to an end? This woman is more than just a skilled athlete. She has a talent that transcends generations. People are paying attention because of her. She is the reason the Indiana Fever are a national topic of discussion every week, the reason the attendance figures appear the way they do, and the reason the television ratings are what they are. When Caitlin Clark tries to check back in, you don't sit her down. When Caitlin Clark is in your huddle, you don't create final plays for other players. You don't run an offense that is so predictable, conservative, and fundamentally out of sync with the skill set of your best players that your own players need to go rogue in the closing seconds in order to create a good shot. No amount of victories will make up for any of this, and the fact that it continues to occur tells you something about Indiana's coaching position. Let's now discuss the reaction following the shot, as this is the aspect that the internet has been thoroughly analyzing, and to be honest, they are correct. When that three comes in, watch Stephanie White. Watch closely because a head coach should be happy when her team wins on a buzzer beater, when her players perform well under duress, and when the